What's up, everyone? It's Monday. Let's talk General Hospital for today, February 2nd, 2026. So today we have Rick. He's at Sunny's talking with Sunny, and Sunny is trying to convince Rick to take on Michael's custody hearing, which is a little confusing to me because Diane handles Michael's legal affairs. So why do we need Rick? And since when, Sonny, do we trust your brother? But I digress. I'm going to leave that alone for now. But he's trying to convince Rick to take on Michael's custody case. And Rick is like, I really can't do that because I represented Willow in her custody hearing. And then he's also saying, look, how I went at Michael on the stand during the original custody hearing, there's no way that Michael is going to listen to anything I have to say. Meanwhile, Michael is at Bobby's with Jacinda, and they're having a nice breakfast. And I don't know if it's breakfast. They're having a nice meal. And Christina comes and she's happy to see Michael happy, and he's kind of lighthearted and free with Jacinda. And so she sits at their table and they're talking. And Michael gets a call from Sunny asking Sunny to come over to the house. So Michael goes over to Sunny's and tells him that he wants Rick to represent him in the custody case. And Michael, as Rick predicted, was like, no. And then he is saying that, I have all the cards in my court, so I don't have to compromise. And if Willow wants to compromise, she need to come to me herself. But Sonny is pleading with him to listen. Then Michael gets a call from Diane saying that DA Turner wants to question him in regards to Drew's shooting. Meanwhile, Alexis is at her office. She shows up at her office and Suzanne tells her that someone is waiting for her. And she's like, is it Sunny? And she's like, no, it's somebody that you probably don't want to talk to, but they refuse to not talk to you. And she goes into her office and she sees this Willow. And Willow is there to ask Alexis to represent her in her custody hearing. And Alexis is all immediately like, no. It comes down to Willow blackmails her and says, basically, you won't be able to see Scout if you don't represent me in the custody case. Willow is a sociopath. And because she got away with shooting Drew, she is now going to be hell on wheels, so to speak. And I'm sick of Alexis allowing everyone to blackmail her. Like, at what point do you stick your foot down? And I don't know why they don't start recording conversations. I said this when Portia was being blackmailed with Drew. Every time Drew came in my office, I would start my phone recording because blackmailing someone is a crime. So if you think you want to keep blackmailing me and think you're going to have something over me, no, I'm going to have something over you too, because I'm not going to keep giving in to a blackmailer, or in Alexis's case, all these different blackmailers, because at what point will they stop? What's going to stop them from coming back and asking for more? You know? Meanwhile, at Bobby's, Marco and Lucas are there talking, and Lucas is basically saying, I think it's time that we find a place of our own. And Marcos absolutely does not want to leave his father's house. At this point, the audience knows that Marco is just as deep in this BS as Sidwell is. And so he doesn't want to leave his dad's home for obvious reasons. And so because of this, um, he's like, no, my dad works so much and I need to spend time with the only parent that I have left. Think kind of playing at um Lucas's heartstrings since Lucas's mother is dead too. And he is very touchy every time they mention the catacombs. And Lucas is like, I used to live there. Like, that ain't nothing. But he's like, you gotta promise me some story about when he was a little boy. He got lost in a cave. That is 9 times out of 10 a lie. And if Lucas has any um self-preservation, he would start being sus of Marcos. But that remains to be seen. They also see Britt walking in, and Lucas is like, "Oh no, she doing a walk of shame if I've ever seen one." Speaking of Britt, she's just come back from the cabin with Jason. They have to pretend now that they don't see it for one another, and she's happy because Jason is telling her that he's gonna come through for her, and that they made the plan that she's going to give him a vial of her medicine so that they can have it reverse traced and recreate it. However, when Britt gets back to her room, she sees that her medicine is no longer there. They're 10 steps ahead of her, and it's been removed already. Then we have Chase and BLQ. They're chatting, and then Emma and Geo come, and they basically wonder where Tracy is, or she was mad at them. And they're like, what do you mean? And they tell them that during the snowstorm, Tracy went to Drew's to try and get their things back, and that they were supposed to meet them, but because the roads were closed, they weren't able to. Tracy eventually comes home after BLQ is a little bit worried and calling around trying to figure out if something happened to Tracy. She had Chase called to see if maybe Tracy's car had been involved in an accident. Everything seems to be okay. Then Tracy walks through the door and she's just kind of wistful. Makes me question what happened at the house after we last seen Tracy and Martin. And I probably will regret asking that question because I probably don't want to know the answer to that. But anyway, um, she's walking in all wistful and she tells them that she got the stuff and that Martin helped put some of it in her car. And then the rest should be packed up and put on a truck and delivered later on that afternoon. And then Trace, being the op that he is like, you can't just take the law in your hands or whatever, whatever. And basically, Tracy's like, if Martin's attorney didn't have a problem with me taking the stuff and he helped me get the stuff, what makes you think it's an issue? You know? And then BLQ was like, you're right. And so Tracy has been successful in obtaining the things. But then Emma gets a phone call from the French police stating that Anna had escaped from being held prisoner and that Cesar Faison is still alive and that she stumbled into the police station. So now we're trying to figure out like what's going on with that, which we know that this is likely a lie, but we're moving this story along. But let me know what you thought of today's episode, and I'll be here same time, same place for tomorrow's episode. Bye. Let's talk General Hospital for today, February 3rd, 2026. So, to start, we have Britt. She's in her room over Bobby's, and she has realized that her medicine isn't there. Cullum comes by and he basically tells her that in order for her to get her medicine, she will have to go to Windermere and work on the project in order to get her dose of medicine. And she's telling him, that's not feasible because I still need to keep up a normal presence here. And I can't do that if I'm running out to Windermere, every chance I get to go get my medication. And so he leaves and tells her that's basically what it's going to be. And she's upset because now she doesn't have the medicine to give to Jason so that he can reverse trace the medicine and recreate it. In the meantime, Jason is talking to Dante and he is telling Dante about the phone call that Emma received, and he is telling him about his last conversation with Anna, and he's telling him that he's going to go to Paris to see about Anna, but he has to do something first, which is to go see Britt so that he can get the medication to Brick. He has to go see Britt to go get the medication to give to Brick so that Brick can have it traced and duplicated. But when he gets there, of course, she tells him that he can't be there because Colin was there and that he took the medicine. And he was like, I'm going to Windermere. And she's like, no, this is it. It's over, basically. And he's like, he's going to figure it out. Trust me. Then Cullum comes back and he brings her a dose of medicine, but he won't let her have it. He says he's going to inject her himself, and he does. So then we have Sonny. He's at home. He has a new dog named Fez, and DA Turner comes over, and she comes over there to basically let him know, like, the run of things, like that she's recusing herself from, the case with Michael, but Molly, for right now, is questioning um, Michael. I don't think she tells him any of that because, she can't, tell him everything. And then they have a little dance, a back and forth. Who do y'all think getting one up on the other? My money is on Sonny because he does this. This is what Sonny does. Like, Turner thinks she's smart and that she can use her feminine wiles to disarm Sonny and then get the evidence that she needs to bring him down. But my money's always on Sonny. Then we also have Emma. She's telling Felicia about the phone call that she got from the Paris authorities about her grandmother, and Felicia is like stunned, especially at the mention of Cesar Faison's name. So she calls her husband, Mac, to, hear what Emma has to say. Mac buys him and Felicia plane tickets, and they're, speculating what if this is just a ruse by Anna so that she can send up a smoke signal, whatever the case may be. So Emma is like, yeah, if that's the case, she called me for a reason. I'm going to go to my grandmother with you. And they try to talk Emma out of it, but Emma's like, yeah, no, I'm not going to hear of that. Like, I'm going to figure out what is going on with my grandmother. And then she says that she'll call her grandfather, Robert, and have him meet her in France. And they're like, no, don't do that because Robert he'll go crazy and scorch earth to try and get to Anna and get Anna out of it. So they're like, no, don't do that. And she's like, okay, well, y'all my backup now, because if you're not gonna let me call my grandpa, then y'all y'all gotta look out for me. So the three of them are going to Paris. And so then we have Michael and Diane there at the DA's office. They're meeting with Molly and Nathan to go over Michael's movements the night of Drew's shooting. And at first, Diane is like, nah, this isn't, we're not doing this. But then when they realize that Molly's going to do the questioning, Diane sees it as a strategy. Um, and they answer Molly's questions. Later, we see that DA Turner comes back to the office and she asks Molly and Nathan what they thought about Michael. And they basically, Molly says, I can't give an unbiased, um, I can't give an unbiased answer about what I think about Michael's statement. And so she's like, yeah, that's what I figured. That's why I asked Nathan to be here. And so she asked Nathan, and he was like, yeah, Michael, he answered all the questions, and he even copped to being outside of Drew's house. And Turner is basically like, they need physical evidence. They don't need videos that could be tampered with or destroyed or anything like that. They need hard physical evidence. So that brings me to Willow and Nina. Willow goes back to her mom's house, and she has the key from Martin that Tracy gave him. And she's trying to think of how she can use the key in order to help her with her custody hearing, her visitation hearing, which is next week. And so she wants to try and use the key for something. She's trying to figure out a way to be able to use that against Michael, which I think she's going to end up planting it, which I think will ultimately backfire on Willow, because we know that Kai and Trina know that she did it. We also know that if they charge Michael, Kai and Trina are going to come forward and they're going to tell what they know. Now, Willow can't be tried for that again, but it could cause issues for her, because it's definitely going to cause issues with her visitation hearing. And then they may look more closely into Drew being locked in, because, like, was this an accident? Like, was this a side effect of his previous injury from the shooting? Like, it's going to raise questions. And Willow planting that key is going to only bring those questions to the forefront. So I don't recommend her doing that, but she feels like she has to throw everything, but including the kitchen sink, at Michael in order to be able to see her children. And for once, Nina was being a mother, and I like the advice that Nina was giving Willow today. But like I said, Willow is very irrational right now. She's not trying to hear any logical thinking. She's a sociopath. She will hurt anyone who stands in her way. So let's say when the visitation hearing comes and it doesn't go her way, is her next course of action to attack Michael? And how is Alexis going to be feeling if she were to do something to Michael? Because everyone, Trina and Kai and Alexis, they're letting her run unchecked. And I understand it from Trina and Kai's perspective, because they could be in trouble, but she's a danger to society. Hey guys, let's talk General Hospital for today, February 4th, 2026. So it's a lot to go through in this episode. Um, so we have Lulu and Nathan, they run into each other at Bobby's, and it's very awkward since the snowstorm and their kiss. And now they're in a place where they are trying to figure out what their new normal is because they've decided that they can't act on the feelings that they have for one another because they have to think about their relationships with Maxie and Dante. Um, Lulu leaves and she goes to see her mother and she talks to her mother about her feelings for Nathan. And Laura basically tells her that, I would like to see you take things slow and figure out, what you want to do and remember that you deserve to be happy. She also tells her, that it's kind of a gray area, um, seeing how Nathan was presumed dead for so long and Maxie has moved on with Spinelli. So she's given Lulu a lot to think about. And then on the other hand, Nathan has gone to see Nina and they're having the same conversation. And Nina asks him if he thinks maybe he is confusing his feelings for Lulu with the fact that she was Maxie's best friend and it she makes him feel close to Maxie, and he's like he consider that, but he doesn't think that's the case, that his feelings for Lulu are genuine. Before Nathan came over, Liesel was at her home talking to Liesel about Willow, and Liesel discussed, how Willow and Drew, that is, have a codependent relationship and how she doesn't necessarily feel that it's a good idea for Willow to take care of Drew post stroke, that she calls. But she doesn't think that it's a good idea. But Nina doesn't want to make waves with Willow, and Lisa was like, "You're the mother. That's your job. You make waves. Like when you know what's in the best interest of your children." And to an extent, I understand Lisa because Willow has been let off her leash long enough because Nina was too afraid to make waves with Willow. Like she'll be all right, make waves. Meanwhile, Michael and Willow are meeting with Rick and Alexis to try and mediate a negotiation, a custody negotiation, so that they can avoid going to court because, it's possible that Michael could be charged in Drew's shooting. And we see in that interaction that Willow is trying to make sure that Michael is charged in connection to Drew's shooting. She has planted the key that Tracy had made on Michael's keyring so that it can look like he had access to the house. But like I said yesterday, this might backfire for Willow because we also have the truth, which is that Kai and Trina were in the house at the time of the shooting. They heard the shots. They heard Wiley call Willow, and Alexis has verified that the number that called Willow at the time of the shooting was in fact Wiley. So I'm sure that's going to all come into play if Michael is indeed arrested or brought in because of Willow planting the key. And I know that Willow can't be tried for shooting Drew again because she was acquitted. However, it's not going to be a good look, and it could potentially cause her to lose her children. And then if she does lose her children, is Michael in danger? Okay, so before Laura and Lulu have a discussion, Joss is at Laura's office doing an interview of Laura, the mayor. I'm guessing under the guise of being a regular college student, but we all know that she's trying to get information about what is going on at Windermere. So she's asking Laura questions and then she's packing up to go, and she takes out the book that she discovered at Windermere, and she and Laura's like, "Where did you get that?" And she uses that to ask Laura questions. And Laura tells her that the book is written under a pseudonym and that Cesar Faison wrote the book, and that that face on the cover is in fact Anna because he was obsessed with Anna. So then what happens is Jocelyn goes to Bobby's and she is sitting there reading the book, and in walks Liesel. So then she starts to question Liesel, but Liesel's like, "Girl, you ain't low. What do you really want?" And she tells her that she saw the book at Windermere, and that's what made her check it out at the library, and that she saw it with a pack of cigarillos. And she's asking, "Do you think that someone is um, obsessed with Faison?" And then and Liesel's like, "Or trying to imitate him." And we can see the wheels in Joss's head start to turn. Then we have Sunny and Jason, and they're talking, and Jason tells Sunny that Britt confirmed everything and that Cullum is the director of the WSB, basically the person that tried to kill Sunny, who blew up his penthouse and injured Michael. And then it was Sidwell that blew up Charlie's and endangered Christina. Sonny wants to go after him, but he's like, "You can't, because if you do that, Britt's going to die because they're parceling out her medicine." So they're coming up with a plan to try and figure out how to stop what they have going on Spoon Island because they have a better idea of what's going on now. And then we have Mac, Emma, and Felicia there in Paris, and they are going to see they're going to see Anna. Anna, she is cognizant of what happened to her and where she is, but she has had her mind tampered with, and she believes that Cesar is alive, which is what the plan was. She tells them that the car stopped for gas or something, and she got out and she just ran. And she ran to a farmer who took her to the police, but the police weren't listening. So that's how the altercation happened. And in doing so, now she's in a place where they're not willing to release her because they don't think that's in her best interest. And she has to stay there. And she tells Emma to tell Jason that she was right. And Emma, who's very visibly upset to see her grandmother like this, has to leave with Mac and Felicia because there's nothing they can do to help Hannah. But let me know what you think about this episode in the comments, and I'll be back tomorrow. Let's talk General Hospital for today, February 5th, 2026. Let's start with that bald man, and I'm being nice because my mom's going to watch this. That bald man took himself over to Alexis's office today because he wants Alexis to help him get a court order to force Portia to take a paternity test. And as I have been saying amongst myself and my friends, Alexis owes Portia because she basically spilled all of Portia's business and tea in front of everybody for no reason, because it had no bearing on the case, because she had nothing to do with Drew's shooting, and they couldn't even use Portia as an alternate suspect because she had nothing to do with it, and all her business got spilled for no reason. So she basically owes Portia. So I would have been side eyeing Alexis more than I already do if she would have agreed to help him obtain a court order. And she tried to provide him with sound counsel and tell him how to handle and approach this, because he doesn't want to start none, because there's definitely gonna be some. If the baby turns out to be his. So like, she's telling him like, you need to chill and let Portia do what she's gonna do. And he can still proceed, in my opinion, proceed with getting the divorce because nobody has filed yet. And that's driving me insane. He can proceed with getting his divorce and moving on with that woman if that's what he wants to do. But I think he should respect Portia's decision to not get a paternity test right now, because at the end of the day, this is not the same situation that you had with Trina, because everyone's upfront and knows that, okay, the paternity is between these two people. So it's not even necessary for you to do that, because once the baby gets here, we can get a paternity test, which I think if he leaves her alone, she'll get the test. But I digress. Next, my girl Portia is back at work, and I'm a little frustrated. I'm happy she's back at work. However, I am frustrated because she's no longer co-chief. And yes, I know Portia did wrong. I know that. But other people have done worse. But I digress. I'm going to leave that alone. She is talking with Isaiah, and she's also talking with Liz, and she's just trying to get back acclimated into her new reality, and she's trying to enjoy this next phase of her pregnancy because everything is out in the open. She can be a little bit more free, and she's just trying to enjoy it, and she wants a little peace. And Curtis comes, and he didn't approach her like Alexis says, because I don't think he should have approached her while she was at work. She just got reinstated. Don't come to her job. I don't think he should have approached her there. And I think that he shouldn't have been so demanding. But he basically threatened if she doesn't give him what he wants, then he will go get a court order. And she said, well, do what you got to do. And that's my girl. I'm like, yes, Portia, let him know. Go do what you got to do. I ain't got nothing. Whatever, Curtis, do what you got to do. Then we have this darn Chase that gets on my last nerve. He is at Bobby's having breakfast or whatever with his wife, and he overhears Molly's phone call. eavesdropping. He overhears Molly's phone call, and then he goes over there and he's questioning her about something that she can't really talk about. And so Rick comes and she like cuts the conversation short. And Brooklyn was like, "Why are you so obsessed with this?" Because he's obsessed because he wants inside Willow's panties. Sorry, Brooklyn, I hate to be the one to tell you, but he may not be ready to admit it yet, but it's the truth. Then we have Jordan and Justine having a conversation, and Justine is trying to get an idea about Sunny from Jordan. And let me just say, I am not a Jordan fan. And everything Jordan says and does annoys me. So I'm going to just go ahead and skip over that and leave that at that. She tells her to do the opposite of what Sunny has asked you to do. And Jordan, I feel like, just loves to be on the wrong side of history. Then we have Lucas and Liz. They're at the hospital and they're looking at the lab reports and everything. And they're like saying that Drew should go to a facility, but Willow is taking care of them, and they're looking like, Then we see Drew being wheeled out, strapped to a chair, and because Drew is a menace, it was quite hilarious to me. So he's strapped to a chair, and Willow is talks to Liz and Lucas, and they're kind of questioning her taking care of him, but that's what she gonna do. She gonna take care of him one way or another. But anyway, then they go home, and Trina and Kai are at the house, which I think that was the stupidest place for them to have that conversation. And I'm 75% sure Willow heard part of their conversation, but I digress again. And I'm worried that something may happen to Kai. And then we also see that Willow talks to Drew, and she tells Drew, "Yeah, I shot you." Willow crazy, y'all. She done lost all her marbles. Then back at Bobby's, like I said, Rick came in. So Molly and Rick are meeting to have breakfast, and then she's telling him about her book, and she's telling him about her and Cody, and Rick said he likes Cody and that she should go try and make things right with Cody. And then she was like, "Well, what about you and Liz?" And so he sends flowers to Liz, and he goes and asks her out for dinner. And at first she's like, "Bro, I haven't heard from you in months." But then, he was like, he was trying to get his bearings and get his mind right um the after Alexis and them had him locked up in her basement. But he said he was trying to get his mind right and everything, and they agreed to go to dinner. And then we have Carly, Sunny, and Michael. They're at the house, and he's telling them about the deal that he made with Willow for the 60-40 split in his favor, because he's saying that he can't afford to have a custody hearing if charges are brought up against him for shooting Drew. And he tells them about the questioning and all of that. And he was like, it was either make the deal or leave the country with my kids. And so Sonny is telling Michael, don't worry, you're not going down for this. And as soon as Sonny says that, Chase and Brooklyn walk into the kitchen, and it's very awkward because, as we know, Chase is dead set on Michael has attempted to shoot Drew, when we all know that it was Willow. She shot him. Now she's the cause for his current state. But let me know what you thought about today's episode, and I'll see you guys here tomorrow. Bye. Hey guys, let's talk General Hospital for today, February 6th, 2026. So today we have Britt. She's coming to work, and Liz is trying to tell her that she has patients and that the chief of staff wants to see her. I'm salty about that. But anyway, the chief of staff wants to see her, and Britt is being Britt, and she gets smart with um Liz before Liz can even get it out. And then Liz, um Britt, and eventually apologizes to Liz, and she's coming back to ask Liz a question while Liz is checking in Rocco for his community service. And then Britt starts chatting with Rocco when she sees him. And Dante's face the whole time is like, why are you talking to my son? So, um, Rocco, Liz, scurries him along to go get him set up for his community service for the day. And Dante basically confronts Britt and tells her to stay away from his son because it's dangerous. And he doesn't know like why it's dangerous for Britt to be around Rocco. He just feels it. And I feel like that's a bit of foreshadowing that, because we all know everything that Britt has going on. We know that Cullum is kind of using Rocco as a way to keep Britt in line, and Britt being in line is kind of not her thing. So I think that he's going to have to make good on his threat, and that something is actually going to happen as far as Rocco is concerned. I think that was a bit of foreshadowing there. And then later we see Britt and Rocco talk again because she just can't not talk to him. And he's like, I know you're busy, so, don't feel obligated to come to my game. And she was like, yeah, I am kind of busy, and I'm, took a second job or whatever. So I'll try, but I might not. And he's like, it's okay. And they share a sweet moment. It's always weird for me when I see Britt act like a human being, but Britt is still, I, yeah, I like Elizabeth said, I don't have a use for her. Then we have um, Christina and Jacinda. They're going to a yoga class, and Christina is talking to Jacinda, and it comes out that Michael has agreed to the 60-40 split with Willow, and Jacinda starts to feel guilty because it's because of her that he has to do what he can to try and stay in his kid's life, because it's not a good look to be with Jacinda because of her former profession. And Christina's trying to convince her that Michael doesn't see it as an issue or whatever the case may be. And Ezra comes in, and Ezra is still pressing Jacinda because he wants to kind of be seen in public and make it seem like they're a couple, and so that he can kind of save his image for when he testified on the stand that he was picking up an escort. And then in the meantime, he kind of propositions Christina, and then Jacinda kind of tells him who Christina is, and he's like, oh, I didn't know. And then Jacinda is trying to create a backup plan, because she's thinking maybe she will, do what Ezra propositioned, because she doesn't want to be a burden to Michael. But Christina is like, you are underestimating my brother, but at the same time, Christina doesn't want to push. The thing is, I will always say that I like Jacinda because at least she's honest. Not a lot of people are, and I can respect it. Then we have Michael and BLQ, and she's talking to him, and he tells her about the 60-40 split, and she's like, "Why would you do that?" And she figures out that he is scared that he may be charged in Drew's shooting, and then they talk about, how to look at the situation, and she tells him that she'll help him break it to the kids. So Michael brings Wiley and Amelia down, and he and Brooklyn, explain that they're now going to be able to see their mom, and Wiley has some questions, and they make it child friendly and good for him, and I like that. Then we have Drew and Willow. Of course, Drew is now home from the hospital, and Willow has him in the room, and she is talking to him, and she is just letting him have it. She is letting him have it and telling him basically, yeah, I shot you, and this is why I did it, and I needed to get away from you. And she's just going in, and just going like relentlessly going off of him. Someone said on Twitter yesterday, this is Diary of a Mad White Woman. And this is exactly that, because Willow was just going off on a tangent. The lady is crazy. Do I feel bad for Drew? Absolutely not. Drew deserves everything that Willow is putting him through, and then some. But it's funny because Willow is completely off her rocker. She's going on and on and on. Then she tells him that he didn't have a stroke, that she has given him a medication that he needs to stay on because he'll stay in that state that he's currently in until if he gets his dose regularly, and she injects him with the medicine. Like, Willow is crazy, insane. Like, if she wasn't crazy and I wasn't concerned about her being with her children knowing that she's this crazy, it would be comical. But I do have to worry about the kids. Like, I know that she wouldn't do anything to them, but she has lost touch reality. She like tells how she meditated the shooting. Like, Willow is crazy. Unbeknownst to Willow, Chase, Mr. Detective Extraordinaire, has found Michael's keys, and as we know, the other day, Willow planted the key, Drew's key, on Michael's key ring. So Chase has found the key, and he goes to Willow's house, and he's trying all the keys, and he finds the key that lets him in the house. And he's looking around, and he hears a crash because at one point during Willow's conversation, I should say monologue with Drew, she throws a tray on the ground, and he hears a crash, and he runs up to see if she was okay. And um he basically tells her not to trust Michael, and then he goes back. The thing with me is he didn't hear anything she said. Chase is stupid. Point blank, the period. He goes back to the house, and he tries to put the keys on the ground because I guess he's about to set up Michael. But Wiley sees him put the keys on the ground. So this could come off as if he is trying to set up Michael. And if this comes up as he's trying to set up Michael, That's good enough for him because he's gonna lose his job for good, and BLQ isn't going to want to have to do anything with him. She's going to divorce Chase if that is the case, and I don't believe Wiley saw that for no reason. But I'll see you guys next week.